Hey there, welcome to the Rocket MSP podcast, the show where we ask vendors the tough questions. I'm your host, Steve Taylor. Today I'm joined by Brian Gillette, the CEO of Feel Good MSP. Brian, what's happening, man?
I'm just living the dream over here. Glad to be here with you, Steve.
Dreams are good. As long as it's not one of those like recurring nightmares, I think you're in good shape.
Right. Yeah, I'm living a good one at the moment. That's a good point. Yeah, it's going great. We've been talking about doing this for a couple months. We were just saying in the green room, so I'm glad to be on the show.
Hey, I'm glad to have you, man. You have a really interesting approach. And look, I'm gonna beat you up a little bit here and say, you know, it's just a different sales tactic, right? When I saw in your LinkedIn post how you say that people hate FUD, but if they don't have an urgency mechanism to replace it, um, the salesperson's either going to struggle to close business or they're going to use FUD anyway, and they're going to call it education.
Yeah.
Um, that's interesting because I'm sure some people who are inexperienced would call what you just did FUD.
Oh, okay.
But I also think that they don't necessarily understand the nuance and the differences in the different styles of sales. You
Sure.
really are educating because you're saying, look, if you don't replace this, then one of two things are going to happen. That's
Mm,
not fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's
no.
there's actual certainty in there.
Right.
So it's not fun. It's something else. And I like that approach you're taking where you basically say, look, if you don't do this, one of two things are going to happen. So let's talk.
Yeah. And FUD is not an old idea. It's not a new idea. It's been around a long time. I think our industry has sort of perfected its own version of FUD because
Mhm.
cybersecurity lends itself pretty easily. But
Oh yeah. No,
to your
if you look at like cybersecurity sales, for example, like that's a here. Let me fix my camera here. Cybersecurity sales is a perfect example where oh well, if you don't get our cybersecurity protection, then you guys are going to get hacked and ransomware and this, and then you're going to go out of business because 90% of businesses that get hacked go out of businesses within 12 months or whatever, right?
right.
That's fun.
Oh yeah, that's FUD. And here's the sad thing about it. The sad thing about FUD is that it works. That's why
Mhm.
people do it. If it didn't work, nobody would do it because it's slimy and terrible. So what we do is we find a sales method that gets us results, and then oftentimes, because we don't really have a true alternative, we'll start then rationalizing the process and say, well, but I'm actually doing them a big favor, and if it weren't for me, I'm saving them from all this risk. And rationalization sounds like logic really well. If you really want it to be true, you can convince yourself of anything. But the truth is that I'll say it this way: FUD is a great way to create urgency in the same way that burglary is a great way to get free stuff. Yeah, you'll get your result, but you have to zoom out and realize, what am I actually doing, and am I making the world a better place, or am I creating value, or am I actually extracting value from my customers? Because if I'm just extracting money from them rather than creating value that's worth investing in, then yeah, I'm going to get a lot of conversion early on at super high ticket and a crazy high amount of churn. That's what I observe is if your relationship starts with fear, you have to keep them afraid in order for them to stay attached. Because what happens if you say, you're going to get hacked? If you don't work with me, you're going to die. Okay. 12 months later, 36 months later, your contract's up. They're going to go, okay, well, you fixed all those problems that you gave me in your cybersecurity assessment, right? And you set everything up, right? So now what? Can I have a price reduction, or do I still need to pay you $350 a seat when you've already done that? You've educated us. Let's get a price reduction. Or, hey, we're going to move on and find another partner. So then you've got to keep them. No, if you leave me, then you are at risk. If you leave me, something bad will happen to you. In any other context, that sentence would be interpreted as abusive.
Mhm. No,
hey, wife,
you're
if you
absolutely
leave
right.
me, your life is going to fall apart. Something terrible is going to happen to you. That's something I would say if I was incredibly insecure in my relationship with my spouse and I needed her to be afraid of losing me because I didn't know how to make her actually want to be with me. And we
Yeah.
do this all the time with our prospects if we try to sell using FUD.
Hmm. So one of the things that I never liked, I mean, honestly, about sales in general is sales is one of those things where, like, if you're really good at chess or other like strategy games, then you'll, of course, the dog starts barking. If if you're really good at like these strategic games, then you'll probably get good at sales.
Hmm.
But if you're terrible at strategy games, it's possible that you'll never get good at sales because it's all strategy. Like you're going to make a move and you have to like you have to of course she's I'm going to lose it on my dog. I'm sorry. You have to think ahead of like, all right, if I make this move, what is my opponent going to do?
Yeah.
And one of the things, like, have you ever read the book Negotiation Made Simple?
No, I've read a shockingly small amount of sales books.
It's
I know
okay.
it. I didn't read it.
So Negotiation Made Simple, I love because it's not a sales book, it's a life book. Like
Mhm.
if you want to get a job and you want to make sure you're getting the best salary when you start, or if you're negotiating to buy a house, like it's just negotiation, like
Yeah.
teaching you how to do it. And with that whole idea of strategy, you also have to determine, like, how aggressive do you want to be with your, I'm going to call them an opponent, right? Because they could be a prospect, they could be somebody that you are against or for. I don't know, but
Mhm.
with negotiation you have to determine, like, do I want to be more like hostile and just be out for me and to hell with whatever they want, or do I
Yeah.
want this to be more of a collaboration, a partnership, where we work together and we both get what we want out of this.
Right.
And the problem is, you only know the way that you're going to negotiate. They may decide to negotiate a different way.
Sure. Yeah, you're getting into game theory here. Their perception of how this relationship's going to go is coming in with these preconceptions and this, we call it sales baggage. So everybody hates salespeople before they even get on the call with you, right?
Mhm.
They just already hate them. They already don't believe you. They're inclined to distrust you. They expect you to be out for yourself. So they're going to come in defensively. That's how they've been trained. So you use the word opponent, which I'm going to illuminate that this is the problem. The problem is what I call the adversarial sales complex, is the core belief that I am competing with the person I'm selling to. And in order for me to win the deal, they have to lose. We might not say it in that exact verbiage, but is that is an epidemic that leads to us saying things like, work with me or else you're going to get hacked. Like the mafia says, buy my insurance or I'll burn your building down. Like it's the exact same core underlying belief that I have to beat my prospect in this negotiation. But you
Yeah.
you realize that this is why everybody hates salespeople, right?
Mhm.
Because we're acting in a way, we're training them to hate us. So my entire life mission, and the whole reason my company is called the Feel Good MSP, and my program is called, my sales philosophy is called the Feel Good Close, because I actually don't think sales has to be adversarial. I think it can be empathy and honesty driven, where both people leave with more value, and it was a pleasant and cathartic exchange. And if you aren't doing that, then you have to go to a cheap, hacky gimmick like scaring them, fabricating some cybersecurity risks. I mean, I worked with an MSP once. They had this assessment tool, which I won't name, that they would end up with this dollar amount of, this is how much MRR they're risking. It's
Oh boy.
so stupid. But the number was also an editable text field. So if the number was lower than their MRR, the sales guy would just change the number and be like, you're risking 5K a month. I'm only 4K a month. It's a no-brainer.
Wow.
It's so predatory, right? But here's what we're observing. I said at the beginning, FUD works. But here is something I am truly observing. You can only cry wolf for so long before people stop coming. And when we are doomsayers, saying everything terrible is going to happen, everything terrible is going to happen, you're going to get hacked, you're going to get hacked. Even if what we're saying is 100% true, the marketplace will continue to desensitize to our repetitive warnings. And what that means is now we say, you're going to get hacked. And they go, yeah, there's nothing I can do about it. I have backup. Leave me alone. Yeah, I'm going to get hacked. My identity is probably out on the dark web. I don't care. Because they've desensitized to this thing that we've hammered over and over again. Well, now here we are. We have to keep ratcheting up the intensity of the cybersecurity assessments, quote unquote, right? That we charge them $1,000 to tell them all these reasons why they're going to die. And all they really get out of it is, if you don't buy from me, you're in serious trouble. But there's not really adding any value outside of a perpetual relationship with us. So we just have to ratchet up the intensity, and we keep, you see what I mean? They're increasingly desensitized because they're more and more numb to the risks every day. So I actually think that FUD we're seeing diminishing returns now, because that's why every webinar out there is about like how to get people to give a shit about managed services. But there's a reason they don't anymore. It's because we keep beating them over the head with this message. What if the value of managed services was client-centric rather than risk-centric? What if it was like, here's all the things you get out of it by working with me, not here's all the things you avoid? No, that message never gets old.
Yeah, that's a really good, I like that perspective. Now, one of the things that I always like doing is I believe in like radical honesty. So one of the things that I would try doing when I would sit down with a prospect is say, hey, look, we can sit here and we can pretend to be all buddy buddy when in the back of our heads we're looking at each other's like enemies when during this whole process, or we can just put all that aside, try something new, and work together. Like if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. But I want to sit down and like really get to know your business, so that way I can make sure I'm recommending something that makes sense for your situation.
Right.
Is that something that you recommend MSPs do?
Yeah, something you just said in there is the key, is if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. So we call it finding the no. The way to make a sale actually go that way is they have constant permission to leave. But this is the opposite of all sales training you ever get. All sales training teaches you to evade and maneuver and flank to like keep them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
go.
I know Sandler training. If you've ever heard of Sandler,
Yeah.
They are big in shooting for the no. Let's get to the no as quick as we can, because the sooner we get a no from this guy, we can stop wasting our time with them and move on to the next one.
Right.
And I don't like, and maybe it's just the way that particular guy would pitch Sandler, because that was me going to a Sandler presentation on them trying to sell me Sandler, right?
Sure.
But maybe that was just his approach, and maybe Sandler is not so. I don't know. Sandler seemed kind of hostile still, because like your objective, if you heard what I said, it was, let's get to the no as quickly as possible so we can stop wasting our time with this guy. If
Yes.
we look at every single prospect as a waste of time, like I loved the show Lie to Me. And there's a new show out right now that I can't remember what it's called, but like I just love those shows where it's all about the micro expressions and figuring out if somebody's lying to you or not. And I truly believe if you go into a sales meeting with that, I think this is a waste of my time, or this guy's wasting my time, you're going to show that. Whether you think it or not, you're going to look like you don't want to be there, and
Yeah.
that's going to turn the person off, and it's gonna be a no.
Right. 100%. So I've been through Sandler training. I'd say Sandler is for sure fundamentally the most aligned with what I think is works today versus like the Carnegie method. I think Carnegie method is 90 years old, right? That the
Mhm.
Win Friends and Influence People, he wrote like a long time ago. So a lot of that is aged out, in my opinion. I mean, in some ways, empathy is always going to be empathy. Humanity is always going to be humanity. But when you use the same exact tactic over and over and over again, then people realize that it's a tactic. Sandler has a lot of things going for it, but it was also released in 1968.
Nothing's changed since then.
Exactly, right?
I
We're talking
mean,
about
gosh, just looking at the political landscape alone,
right,
so much has changed. And then you throw in technology and um, just everything.
right.
Everything has changed since 1968.
Yeah, how about a sales method that was pre-internet? Meaning they had to sign your order form, and it was so much work to go get a meeting, meet with someone in person, sign it in person. So all you really had to do was get them to sign the piece of paper in your hand. But they
Mhm.
didn't have a world wide web of encyclopedic, free, instant access to whatever information they want to research. And all of your competitors on a review website with anonymous reviews, right? And hundreds of testimonial videos to review. They didn't have those things when Sandler started. So
Brian, look at the sales, the whole landscape of technology just from the last, let's call it 3 years to
uh-huh,
now. Like just in the last 3 years, we've gotten all these cool AI tools. Like AI is the big new buzz thing, right?
right,
And now I can ask. I've switched my search engine to Perplexity. I can ask Perplexity, "Hey, I'm using this note taking tool. I'm interested in alternatives because I don't like the way the iPad app works." And it just gives me a list. Like it went out and it scoured the web, and it went to those websites that have all the alternate apps like Product Hunt and everything else, and it gave me a list of tools to check out.
right.
And it's like you can ask it anything. I asked AI this morning to create a 40 song playlist of music to listen to related to total eclipses. And I said I'm going to give this to the outreach director at church. Make
Mhm.
sure that all the music is clean and appropriate for a church setting. And it was like I reviewed all the lyrics and this and that, and I believe all of these are clean and safe, basically.
Mhm.
And some of them seemed like this isn't really related to an
Sure,
eclipse.
sure.
But there's only so many eclipse songs, right? Then you
Right.
have to start getting into music about the sun and the moon. But all that to say, you can do so much with AI that you can almost like get rid of having to work with a salesperson.
Mhm.
And it's actually becoming increasingly difficult to find a salesperson in certain industries. I was
Sure.
at I was at Walmart the other day, or Target. I was at Target, and I was looking for an associate for 12 minutes because they've automated so much. They don't have people just walking the floor. I needed
Right.
somebody to unlock a case. My son wanted to spend his own money and buy a Nintendo Switch. I,
Mhm.
I couldn't get to it without a salesperson.
Right.
So, yeah, so much has changed, and you're right. I mean, Sandler being in 1968 pre-technology, gosh, that's like an archaic sales system at this point.
Yeah, and that's the certain I mean, he really, really introduced the concept of paint funneling, which of course is like maintains a very iconic and very effective method for basic taking a superficial issue that they bring and finding the real root causes of it. That's still I would say that there's a lot of DNA of even the pain funnel that's even in the feel good close, because the core of feel good close is about empathy and honesty.
Mhm.
Empathy is the antidote to FUD. It is
Okay.
the antidote. In fact, I would honestly argue it is the only antidote in the industry, because everybody is using FUD, but they're packaging it through, they're calling it education, or they might even just straight up be calling it FUD. Some of the biggest vendors in the channel, FUD is written on their sales wall in the bullpen. Like, they don't even hide it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I could tell you the name of the vendor and you'd know them. But so a lot of people just say,
are you saying because that's the way they want to sell?
Yeah, they're like, this is how you sell managed services.
Wow.
So let's zoom out and get meta for a second. You talked about how you might have a certain negotiation mechanism or perspective. The other party is going to have a negotiation perspective. And so what you described was some form of a level set when you arrive. Like, hey, just so you know, I don't want to do this. I don't want to try to beat each other up. Can we just like be on the same team, figure out quickly if we're going to help each other, and not like play a game if this isn't going to lead to us having a mutual benefit. So you're attempting a level set there, but even that can be a strategic play. So if you're a buyer and you know this is how salespeople are, you will not believe anything they say. This is our fault. This is our fault that buyers are getting harder and harder to work with, harder and harder to persuade or educate. It is FUD that has poisoned the well of our marketplace. And the only way out of it is radical transformation in the way that we sell. It is an empathy and honesty-driven sales method. We've got to Ted Lasso our way through it.
Oh, I love Ted Lasso, man.
Everybody does. Why do you love Ted Lasso? Because he's empathetic and honest and vulnerable, right? He's a vulnerable, honest guy who genuinely cares for the people he's coaching. So when we go into a sale, if somebody says to me, we're having issues with our backup, a FUD trained salesperson is going to hear dollar signs, and then they're going to say, how's that affecting your business?
It's not.
Yeah. First of all, that is an obvious ploy. That is an obvious attempt to twist the knife. And a prospect is going to go, we're fine. Because they're like, I'm not going to let you stick a knife in me and twist it. So rather than saying, how is this affecting your business? I'm going to say, that sounds frustrating. Because I'm thinking about it, man, you're paying for these freaking backups. They're not working. Your IT guy said they're running, but now you get a report and it's been X's for 6 weeks instead of green check marks. It's infuriating. You're like, God, how frustrating. Plus, you don't even know if the backup's there, and you're still paying full price. Now they feel seen, heard. They're going to expand. They're going to elaborate because you're just making a genuine human connection. It's actually, it's shockingly simple how sales should work. But what it requires is a willingness for us to be present with a person who has the ability to either make us money or reject us. So there's a pretty good amount of self-confidence work that underpins a good salesperson who's willing to be rejected, willing to risk control of the sale by asking empathetic questions, but then also is confident and competent enough not to compromise on the stack or the service offering just because a person says, can I pay less? And you go, sure, I'll rip all these things out of the stack and give it to you for a discount. You still have to be the subject matter expert and therefore the authority, but you can do so in a much more therapeutic way, right? So what I do is very frequently referred to as sales therapy, because at the end of a sale, people should actually feel more connected to themselves and their problem, not one or the other.
I love that, man. And I don't know if you noticed, but I had a tinge of PTSD in the middle of your story there, because you're like, man, you haven't had backups working for 6 weeks, and I'm just sitting here and I'm going, like, I'm so frustrated for this made up story. Like,
right.
Oh man. All right. So normally what we do on the Rocket MSP podcast is we like demo products, and then I usually have a slew of questions that I want to ask from different perspectives. So like I'll have questions from the perspective of like an L3 systems engineer, or a service manager, a business development sales guy, operations manager, CEO. So with that said, you don't really have uh like a I don't, you might have something that people can log into like with like training videos, or is this more like coaching one-on-one type thing?
Yeah. So our sales community is a combination of sort of consulting, training, and coaching.
Hmm.
It's a pretty holistic view. It's a group training program where you have access to over 25 weeks and counting of courses, which are all really, really in depth. And we have coaching calls almost daily. There's 4 days a week at least of live coaching calls available to our members.
That's really cool.
In addition, we have a success coach who meets for 30 to 45 minutes every 90 days, one-on-one with every single member. The goal is we're going to set some 90-day goals and activity tracking. And then in the next 90 days, sort of like our version of a QBR, if you will, the next 90 days, we'll review the last 90 days project and activity. If it's working, we figure out the outcomes. If it's not working, we figure out the barriers, and we set another sort of almost like a fractional CRO or fractional, biz dev partner would do for you. Set the next 90-day goals. This is what to focus on. So, I mean, I guess I have a slide about some of my core training I could put up if you want to get into that. Alternatively, I could talk more about our overall methodology of building sales processes for MSPs at various levels of maturity. What would be more helpful?
What was the first option again?
I have a slide and I could show you a little bit of like a single slide overview of some of our core training.
Okay. Can we start there and then
Yeah.
see where we go?
Yeah, I wasn't planning on.
I know. It's
Right.
okay. While you do that,
Yeah,
let me see if I can find a couple of my questions.
sure. I've got it up whenever we're ready.
Oh, okay. So if you hit the present button in the bottom,
Yeah.
there you go. Cool.
So we have, as I said, our program is largely self-guided in terms of pacing because some
Mhm.
MSPs are coming to us one-man band and they just can't dedicate 10 hours a week to this. Some MSPs have 2, 3 salespeople and a marketing coordinator. They're going to be able to go a little bit faster. So that's why our training is on demand. And then our coaching is always available to supplement wherever you are or whatever issues in the core training that you're working through. But we sort of have 3 modules at this point that we're using as the basic foundation. So this first module at what we would call standard pace represents a month. This is the Feel Good Close. This is my proprietary sales philosophy in depth about the fundamentals of how to sell. This is the antidote to FUD. So if you're selling using FUD or trying not to sell using FUD, but then you just end up saying, oh, I just take people out to lunch and build relationships, and then you have a 10% closing rate, then that's an all too common story. It's because we don't have an urgency mechanism other than FUD. And so we know what we're trying not to do. Like everybody says, I want to sell without being salesy. Okay, but what does that mean? Then what are you trying to be? Right? Because
Mhm.
sales is a job. You do have a role to play. And if you do it well, they will thank you for it. But you can't just be focusing on what you don't want to do because then FUD is still dictating your sales process, just from an opposite perspective. So the Feel Good Close is all about starting by retraining people's inhibiting beliefs. Everybody has limiting beliefs, things they believe about themselves that are stopping their ability to grow.
Mhm.
Uh, the only type of people who have no limiting beliefs are narcissists, right?
Okay.
So everybody has, at some level, I could say, hey, are you comfortable making 10 grand a month? You say, yeah. 100 grand a month. Yeah. Are you comfortable pocketing $1 million a month? Whoa, whoa, whoa. We might have found a barrier, some imposter syndrome somewhere, right? That you're disqualifying success, which can inhibit our real-time growth. So it's about finding those limiting beliefs, identifying them, getting out of our own way. This is through philosophy, sales and infrastructure, process and product, behavior and technique. Those are the 4 weeks of the module. And of course, it's about cultivating really high trust with our prospects. Once we have the philosophy in place, and only after we have the philosophy in place, we put in the playbook. So FUD-free playbook is, think of this like a standard operating procedure for how to make a managed services sale. How many meetings are there? What is each meeting called? How long does each meeting take? What information do you have to gather during each meeting? And then how do you sell the next meeting from it? So bam famming, book a meeting from a meeting so that there's no holes or gaps or leaks in our funnel. It's like people are being, shepherded through the entire journey without us letting them get in their own way and get in their head and psyching themselves out. Because everybody's biggest problem is themselves, right?
Yeah.
If they've had bad backup for 6 months and their MSP never answers the phone, they've had a bad MSP for 6 months, but they're month to month. My first question is, why didn't you solve this 5 months ago? You knew about the problem 5 months ago, but you are not acting because it's for you. You don't want to put up with the hassle. You're afraid of the confrontation. You are afraid of the unknown, et cetera, right? You have blinding sort of punitive optimism that people are going to magically improve without any confrontation. So that prospect is in their own way. We also have to help them find their inhibiting beliefs through some very Socratic questioning and help them then take ownership over solving the problem that they have created for themselves with a solution that they get to take credit for. So that's the FUD-free playbook. Then we run through those. We templatize those calls using what I call objective-based templates. So in this section of the call, we want to achieve blank. Here's an example of the verbiage. Now, in your own words, how would you accomplish that? Then we structure those and role play them. Because if you're not role playing, you're not sales training. This is how we shorten our sales cycle down to like 30 to 90 days on outbound opportunities. No FUD in sight. Then only once we have a sales machine will we put a prospecting engine in it. People come to me for leads, and usually it's like, dude, there's a reason that your $100,000 in marketing spend in the last 3 years got you zilch. It's not because marketing doesn't work. It's because you weren't ready to market because you didn't have your fundamentals in place. I have a feature on Tech Times about this called the top funnel fallacy. It's the core belief that the next right thing to do is feed the top of funnel, when in reality, you have to check the funnel for leaks first. Otherwise, all those dollars you spend on clicks, you're never getting those dollars back, right? But dollars spent on upskilling and standardizing your process, those dollars you'll get a return on for every single click you ever invest in for the rest of your career. But the fail-proof prospecting engine is about our establishing an ideal customer profile. That's a 7-page document about demographics, psychographics, and use cases to make our ICP super clear. Then we write messaging, 4-touch and 4-week standard campaign that we can repurpose for voicemail, direct message, video sales letters, webinars, web copy, etc. Then we have our channels. We pick which channel basically what watering hole are your prospects gathering at. Our default outbound channels that we have strategy for are LinkedIn, cold email, and cold call. Those are usually you get one of those working and cranking. Once it's functioning, you build a second for redundancy and consistency. And then we help you cut through the noise and have a very reliable inbound and outbound sales machine using our week over week activity tracker, aggregating statistics and success so we can then project. We send 533 of this message to people on that saved search list, and we will generate 8 opportunities, resulting in 4 quotes and 1 to 2 closes.
Okay. Now, is this something that you're developing only for MSPs, or like if somebody from, I'm just going to pick a random vendor, a salesperson from Synchro decided they wanted to go through your program, would it work? Would it benefit them?
It's an interesting question. So I'm sort of off the record running right now a pilot vendor sales training program. And it uses a lot of the same core philosophy, but they're separated from the MSPs because I don't want vendors coming in to a pool of MSPs who are all growing and then taking advantage to try to sell their stuff, because I want to protect the MSPs from that experience. So I am piloting if a vendor was like, this is exactly what I need. I'm great at selling to MSPs and I know how to sell managed services, which most vendors have no freaking clue how to sell managed services, right? They know how to sell their little agent. And then they tell MSPs, this is how you sell my agent, but that's not how you sell managed services, So yeah, my philosophy, I would certainly say works anywhere. I've got 15 years of sales experience, but I only worked in my MSP for 3 years, but I grew it to $2 million, you know? So yeah, it would certainly work, but my program is very exclusively for MSPs and some MSSPs and the occasional cyber consultant, right? But yeah, nothing that would deviate much further than that.
Okay. So if the local general contractor decided they wanted to go through your program, you're just
No,
sorry.
no, I would never let them in. They could always purchase some of my video courses at feelgood.courses if they wanted to own those. You know, we've got 11 weeks of mini courses from, industry leaders like Paul Green, and we have a growing amount that of some that aren't released yet, so I can't say, but we've got a cyber insurance guy, Andy Runyon, made me some awesome mini courses. So you could purchase any of those outright, or if you're in our program, you have free access to them.
Very cool. All right, so let's talk about your program. Um, what's it cost?
I won't say.
Okay,
And I can tell you why if you'd like.
sure.
I won't say because I have a strong conviction that this is a choice an MSP needs to make. And I'm really not interested in, I'll say it this way. If people are coming to me saying, I have to get a return on your program within blank number of days, then you're not ready and you can't afford it.
Hmm.
Because I'm not in the cash race business. I've got tons of testimonials of I got a client in 4 weeks. I've got them all over my website. But that's not my promise to you. My promise to you
Right.
is you're going to make more money for the rest of your life.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll put it this way. You will hear my price in minute 4 of a sales assessment. But what I do first is, are you even an MSP that can fit in my program? I do like a 6-7 question interview. And the
Hmm.
last 2 questions are, this is how much time I would need, and this is how much money I would need. So you could be on the call for less than 10 minutes. And if you're actually an MSP that I could consider for my program, then I'm happy to give every single detail about pricing.
Okay. Is there an MSP that like is too small for your program?
Yes and no. So I really try to aim for an MSP at $1 million at least. 1 to 3 million seems to be the sort of the spot where a lot of MSPs can get the most traction. But I
Hmm.
had 2 MSPs that were pre-revenue join me last year, and both of them got their first MRR client in 90 days. So
That's pretty impressive.
um, it kind of comes down to, do you have 2 to 5 hours a week to spend with me, and an additional 2 to 5 hours a week to spend doing the work? Right? So 5 to 10 hours a week that you can really invest in growing. So the question isn't like if their revenue is too small. It's more like the smaller revenue guys typically have their heads so in the weeds, just keeping the thing running, that they can't find that much time. But this isn't going to, like, you can't just pay me a monthly fee and magically you'll make more money. Like, it's because I'm teaching you really, really specific and very difficult behavior modification,
Okay.
you know? But
And
yeah,
that's a really good way to put it, because you really do have to modify your behavior, because we are so ingrained, we don't even realize we're doing it, and we're selling with FUD. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
yeah, and
100%.
the sad thing is a lot of people don't realize they're doing it. In fact, I hate FUD, and then I end up doing it myself. And it all goes back to what you said earlier, where if I don't have an urgency mechanism, what else am I going to do in
Yeah.
order to light that fire under the prospect's hiney and
Yes.
get them to budge?
Yeah. And it's look, the easiest way to sell, the easiest way to get results is to take all those gimmicky shortcuts. Like, it's not impressive to get somebody to buy because you terrified them. But my question is, if people have to be scared to buy your product, is your product really any good?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the other thing that you got to realize is, FUD wears off after a while.
Exactly.
You can scare somebody into signing a contract, and it could be 2 hours, it could be 2 weeks. They're going to hear something or have a conversation with somebody that contradicts what you said in order to get them to sign on that dotted line. And then they're going to have instant buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
And that's where you end up having the most frustrating client experiences, because now you've got a client who doesn't even really want to work with you. They're not sure if you're the right company to work with after all, because they feel like you tricked them, you bamboozled them out of tens of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
So now you're just setting yourself up for a poor client experience from both perspectives. They have a poor um, opinion of you, and now you're getting the brunt of their frustration, and they're taking it out on you and your technicians depending on your size, and it's just going to suck.
100%. If your clients are like, if you have a ton of clients who are terrible to you, if you have if you have the same problem popping up all over the place, you have to look for the common denominator,
Hmm.
right? One day I'm going to have the balls to post this on LinkedIn. That face when you realize the only common denominator in every problem in your life is you, right?
Yeah.
The way you treat your prospects and the promises you make and the threats that you veil behind cybersecurity education are going to determine their emotional state, right? So then you get into transactional analysis theory, the idea that people are either critical adults, nurturing adults, or they're in a child state. And so you have to put them in a child state, putting you in a critical adult state. What
Hmm.
we'd rather do is if they are in a child state because they're terrified when they call you, you want to be a nurturing adult so that you build relationship the longer you're together. But if you're using fear, if you're using FUD, what you're doing is borrowing authority, right? You're
Hmm.
taking an authority loan, and then you're going to have to pay that back with interest. You're going to already be now in debt because you said, I'm an expert. I revealed all these problems to you. And because I'm the one who identified them, I can essentially, you might believe for a short amount of time I can solve them, but that means I have to prove it fast and always, right?
Hmm.
Versus somebody who says, hey, what's really bothering you? What's the real, like, what do you think this is happening? Why haven't you bought an MSP for 6 months? Listen, I'd love to work with you, but I really don't know if this is the right fit or not. This is who we help. This is what we help them achieve and what we help them avoid. Is that even relevant? And when we take an empathetic position, then we have this aspirational build towards additional trust, right? They
Hmm.
want to trust us because they like what we're saying versus they have to trust us because we threatened them. See? And so now your relationship will only build in time because you've built it on the foundation of trust. But just like any other relationship, what other relationship in your life is going to start with fear and end really happy, right? Imagine that
A
first
really
date
good
saying,
movie.
what's that?
A really good movie.
Yeah, I guess so. But you have to think of these as relationships. Like, this is what kills me too, Steve. This actually really grinds my gears. Is the same person will go out and say, you should use a cybersecurity assessment and tell them everything that's about to go wrong and fill in a blank number and then charge them whatever you want to fix it. And then they'll go out and say, we have to take really good care of our clients. Our clients are our relationships. Relationship is everything. It's like, well, which is it? Do you value them or not?
That's a really good point. Now, what are your opinion? What is your opinion on? Uh, that's not the right way to start this question. How can we use a cybersecurity assessment or a risk assessment, compromise assessment, whatever you want to call it, right? Um, how can you use one of these tools without FUD, using some of your tactics?
Right, for sure. Well, the difference between discipline and punishment is the spirit in which it's delivered,
Hmm.
but they can very often externally look very similar. See what I mean?
Okay.
So I think the difference between true FUD and like actual education, where we're adding value to them and we're trying to equip them versus get them off guard, is I think the spirit in which it's delivered. Now, in terms of the communication tactics, what I want to do is set super clear expectations before we do any of these things, right? Expectation setting, agenda setting, that's kind of a cornerstone of our program. So at the front of every meeting, I'm going to say, the reason we're meeting is this. What I'm trying to achieve is this. What do you need out of this meeting? And then we have a primary or multiple success criteria. This meeting is a success if. So if we say, okay, so we want to do a cybersecurity risk assessment. I just want to level set here for a little bit. We are not here to try to find, we're not here to try to shock you, but it is possible that some of the information we're going to find, you're not going to want to hear. If I find things that are really unpleasant, what would be the best thing I could do for you with that information? Get them to opt in to say, oh, I'm a big boy, I can take it. Okay, so you want to hear anything I find, regardless of how flattering or unflattering it is. You want me to share it with you and your team. Am I hearing you right? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure we were looking for the same thing. Now I'll say, Mr. Customer, you don't have to work with me, but there's a certain echelon of risk where I'm going to highly recommend, where it would be unethical for me to not recommend immediate action because of what I understand. Now that's a certain tier of risk. And I'll give you an example of, there's a threat actor actively in your network right now. If I find that, I'm going to make you an immediate action plan, which of course, the only thing I'm empowered to do is give you a proposal for how I would fix it. Okay. You don't have to work with me. You don't have to talk to me again. But if there's certain things, it's like, if you're in immediate danger, I feel like it would be unethical for me to say nothing.
Right.
And they go, oh yeah, we're on the same page. And if they are basically saying to you, like, I already know all of this, then you're saying it correctly. They go, this is, of course, because now you have like triple opt-in. And then you can reveal the information and use the power of silence to let them determine what you want to do with it. Okay, I found these risks in your network. Count to 5. And then they go, okay, what do you want to do about it? We go, well, that's kind of my question for you. How urgent does this feel to you? 1 out of 10. How much is this making an impact? Or Mr. Customer, oftentimes when I end up in a situation like this, I found that some clients almost feel like they're getting sold a bill of goods. I certainly want to make sure you're not feeling that way, but help me understand, how can I best help you navigate this sort of poor report? So packaging, setting expectations, but then constantly transferring the permission to say no back to the prospect. And then if they've had a chance to say no 15 times, that means they've essentially said yes 15 times, rather than the Socratic Carnegie method of asking them stupid questions that the answer is obviously yes, and thinking that we're going to give them this Pavlovian training that they say yes to us all the time. That's like the most condescending possible way of looking at a person. You know what I'm saying? It's like saying, hi young lady, do you like M&Ms? Are you having fun tonight? Okay, will you marry me? What? Why did you say no? Like, it's just so stupid. But that's what the Carnegie method, it worked 90 years ago. It doesn't work today. But if, again, we're getting them constant opt-in, and they're going to go, okay, Brian, yeah, you're good. I get it. What do we need to do next? The other thing, I know this is a long answer, but another thing is, it's easier the earlier in the sale you are, the easier it is to collect information. The later you go, the more it feels like a trap. So you could always sort of start with the if I could, would use, like, hey, just so I know, what is the best, I'm going to do the cybersecurity risk assessment for you. In your mind, what's the best case scenario of what happens here today?
Well, obviously they should say something along the lines of, well, you find my system's in perfect health. There's nothing wrong. My current provider is doing everything that they're supposed to.
Great. So thanks, Steve. So best case scenario you're saying is there's no risks, everything is good, and we leave with a kind of a squeaky clean report. Agreed. If that doesn't happen, what should we plan to do?
That's a really great question. I don't know. I guess it depends on what the problem is.
Okay. And I'm asking this now so that I don't want you to feel sort of bait and switched, but let's be very candid. I sell managed cybersecurity services, right? If I find an issue that you feel your current vendor should have detected. Do you want me to tell you how I would have solved it and put together a management proposal or not?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, so it's worth, if there are problems you feel like they should have been detected, it's worth us going and putting a proposal together. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, final question. What if my proposal is way more expensive than your current one?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it really depends on how much more expensive.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't even know what you're paying now, right? So,
Right.
and I don't know what I would charge you. I guess my question is, if I gave you a proposal that would solve your issues, but it was more money, is it even worth showing you the proposal, or should I just shred it and you're not going to pay extra?
That- Man, that's awesome, Brian. That's awesome. Cuz now you're asking them budget without saying how much are you spending,
Yeah,
how much are you willing to spend. You're not asking any of that, but you're still getting the information.
exactly. Now, let's go to the role play, Steve. Let's say you're the buyer and you don't want to pay any extra. So I say, okay, what happens if my proposal is more money?
I I probably would just stick with who I'm using now.
Got it. Okay. So I've got to meet or be lower than your current price in order for me to have any chance of winning your business. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's a dollar extra, not worth it. The dollar amount is the key thing. I feel a little bit like you're asking me to play darts with a blindfold on. So I'm happy to spend the 2, 3 hours of putting together a proposal, but I'd rather not go through it if it's going to be a waste of everyone's time. Are you comfortable just revealing what the target is?
Yeah, sure. We spend 12,000 a month right now for managed services.
Okay. Uh, I'm not sure that's possible for me.
Hmm. You don't even know yet.
Yeah. I don't even know.
That's the best part, Brian. You have no idea what your quote's going to be.
Right. And in this, I'm assuming maybe I have a general user count in this case. But if
Sure.
I say, oh yeah, 12,000, yeah, I'll be more. How about we do this? Uh, our scopes are, I'll say it this way. The fact that you're only paying 12,000 probably means the scope of what I do and what they do are not the same, because my tools would cost more than that. Are
Mhm.
you comfortable giving me, you can redact the logo or whatever, that's fine. But could you just give me a copy of your current contract or invoice so I know kind of what I'm up against?
Yeah, sure. That seems reasonable.
Cool. I appreciate it. Okay. Now let's schedule this assessment. So I haven't even done the assessment and I've got authority, need, and timing more or less, right?
Mhm.
And then, you could do that. You could use this exact formula to do anything. By the way, if we find an issue and it's pressing, I know I'm not trying to ask you too many hypotheticals here, but when would you want to realistically act?
Well, my contract with my current provider is up in 6 months. I'm just doing due diligence right now to, you know, determine if we're going to stay with who we're with or if it makes sense for us to, move on to someone
Sure.
new.
Okay, 6 months. Don't you feel like it might be more fair to give your current vendor a chance to find any of the things they're missing?
Well, I mean, I signed a 36-month agreement.
Okay.
Don't you feel like I've given them 30 chances to fix
Sure.
all of this?
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. I don't. Yeah, that makes sense to me. If we find something, it's urgent, and you feel like this is something they should have they should have observed. Is there any world where we could at least execute a letter of intent, a non-binding letter of intent, or something that we've got a shot at winning your business in 6 months?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're not coming in 5 months early.
Oh, that makes sense.
So that's how I would handle that.
I like that.
Are these helpful? Instead of a product review, you just get real scenario role plays.
Oh, this is awesome, man. I feel like we have just set up. Yates Networks is somebody who watches like religiously, man, and he's watching us right now. I feel like you've just given him the fuel to go out and make a new sale to a larger company than he normally supports within the next 90 days.
Good.
Yates, that's a challenge, sir.
Yates, hit me
I
up.
believe
Call
in
me
it.
when you send me a DM when you close one or when you use one of these questions.
I agree. Let us know when it happens, man.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe it can if you if you do the work.
Not only it can, it has to. Let me put it this way. There are a bunch of people sitting out there right now next to a phone who desperately need what you are selling right now. They do. And they might not even yet know they need it, but they're 3 good questions away from totally getting it. There's this growing sort of mantra in the channel because, of course, MSP is increasingly crowded. There's 40,000 MSPs in North America or whatever now. But all these people come to me and say, well, Brian, you've never sold in Phoenix. It's so saturated here. And they always say that. I've heard it about Phoenix, Dallas, Fort Worth, Colorado, New York, New Jersey, all over South Florida, Seattle, San Francisco, LA area, everywhere. Everybody uses the exact same excuse. Well, you don't know how crowded my city is.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be a shame if you had an excuse that was so good, you stopped growing as a person. So my challenge to any MSP watching is take this excuse that nobody understands cyber and my city is crowded and just flush those excuses. Even if that's true, what are you going to do about it? Die? Look, you're either going to grow your business or you're not. But sitting around talking about all the reasons we're not growing is not making you a better salesperson. It's not helping your business grow. It's not going to help you have that retirement exit that you're looking for. You've got to get over these really good excuses and say, okay, yeah, I have an uphill battle. But you know what never goes out of style and what cuts through like a knife is an empathetic listener.
Mm.
You and I both know, Steve, most salespeople suck, right? And you're on the call and you feel the gimmicks. But when you finally feel a good salesperson who's like listens to you, is willing to give you the demo that you need when you want it, not having to put you through the whole rigmarole, and it's just doing a great job. I'm shocked how rarely that happens to me. You know what I mean? I had a boss who used to say, I didn't get where I am because I'm good. I got where I am because most people are just that bad. And the MSP sales community is still relatively immature in sales. They're all still scaring everybody. So actually, the more people trying to scare your prospects, the better you'll look when you book your meeting with them. You want them to have had 6 crappy sales assessments. See what I mean?
I like it. I like it a lot. Brian, I gotta say, man, you, sir, are a wealth of knowledge. I really do wish you the best. I really enjoyed our conversation. I wish we could do this for another hour. Maybe we'll have to sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Have me on anytime. This was great.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, let's see. This Friday, no demo days because it is Good Friday. And then Sunday is Easter. Monday, I've got Stack Chart Spotlight, and the week will continue. So, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you so much, Brian, for being a guest. And I will catch you guys at the next live stream. Take care, everybody.